The other day I was doing a video on installing a mega fuse holder on a 2010 Ram 1500, and I didn't really get to show, probably not doing a good job of showing this either, how I put the wire ends on. You see, I took a razor blade, made a line across there, then a quick slit that way. And what I normally do, because I'm just so used to it, is I grab it and pinch it and then roll it off of there. And I always try to pick the right size terminal for the size cable you're using so you don't have a bunch of air in there. And this is probably not the most orthodox of crimps, but it's the type I like using, and it makes for a pretty neat connection. And really and truly, I might want to bring that out just a hair more. You see how it's not fully through, so the more connection you can get, the better off you are. So I'm going to slide that off and take another little bit off there. If I can do it without cutting my finger off. Makes it a little bit harder, but there, I got it. Now see, we got it through to the end, so we're going to have the maximum surface contact that we can possibly get. And one thing that is unusual about these terminals, see that what looks like a seam right there? That was originally a seam where the metal was rolled around, but this particular brand, they actually braze that seam, so it's more or less a solid tube. And you'll notice that when I crimp it, it doesn't separate. If it wasn't brazed, it would want to separate and start opening that split up. And I gave it the first initial pass, and these jaws will go down a little bit tighter. These are Nipex or Nipex smooth jaw pliers, and they got a heck of a cam system right here, so you get a lot of pressure on it. And that's pretty darn tight. Now that, in most instances, is going to be more than enough, particularly when you got a new terminal and new cable. But I'm going to go one step further, if I can find it. Where's my solder? There's my solder. Get that junk out the way. And see if I can do this on camera for you. It's a little bit difficult to do that. Adjusting it to where we have a nice flame on it, a good bit of heat. And what I do is I put the heat on the back side here. Try not to melt the red insulation much. This is actually not that good of insulation because it's got a lower temperature than most. There's some special battery cables that you can heat up and put a direct flame to them, and they won't melt at all. But this is going to wind up charring a little bit. But we're going to use heat shrink tubing to dress it all out and seal it. You can see it flaring up a little bit. I'm trying to keep the heat off of it as much as I can. And what I'm doing is I'm just trying to get a good seal on this end to where water won't be able to get in there and cause any corrosion. See, that looks pretty good right there. And it's probably flowed to about right there anyways, because you see how I touch it and it just melts. But that's sealed up and it won't ever give any trouble as far as water intrusion. Now what I'm going to do, see, it looks a little bit nasty right there. I got to let it cool off a little bit, and I'm going to wipe some of this soot off. Oops. There, I've wiped the soot off. Got a little bit of blob of solder there, but it won't really hurt anything. And what I'm going to do is just shave some of these melted lumps off. So it'll be just a little bit neater under there. And I do have a little bit of a lump of solder there. It's not going to hurt anything. It'll be a little bit ugly. Let's see if we can knock it off with a file. Ooh, that thing's warm. I could just heat it back up and tap it, but I don't want to tap the solder out of the terminal in the cable. It has a tendency to do that. And I'm fairly used to doing this because if you get a little bit sloppy and you run solder up on this flat area, you need to take a file and lay it back down flat, because that lump of solder, when you go to tighten it up, will create a high spot, which is actually softer than everything else. So it'll start working back and forth and it'll loosen up on you over time and start arcing and carrying on. And we're trying to prevent that just by doing this repair. We don't want arcing and sparking and bad connections. We want everything to be clean and tight. See, like there's a little bit of solder up there, and it just, you can feel it when you go across it, that it's just softer than the rest. And I'd rather have just a little bit of the tinning missing than to have too much on there. And like I said, it's pliable enough you can slide it on from this end, but because I don't have anything on this end, I probably should have done that. And you got your choice between using a heat gun or using just a torch to put this on here. And like I said, we've got a seal right there with the solder. We're going to put this back to a fan flame. And just work our way around. And it'll shrink down. We're going to try to keep the flame off of that red insulation on the cable, because we don't really want to discolor it. I've had some red heat shrink tubing too, and I try not to use the torch on it at all, because it takes just a fraction of a second and you've heated it up too much and it turns kind of brown and gummy looking and everything. So when I'm using the red heat shrink tubing, I usually use the heat gun, electric heat gun. And if you look down there at the bottom, you can see where the sealer is melting and squishing out. And that little bit of charring right there won't matter, because as it cools off, we'll just wipe it and that char look will just disappear. But you see that sealer? So we're sealed around here, we're sealed around here, we're sealed in there. So we have a very good crimp connection now. Just crimped, sealed, and taken care of. Let's see if we can get that back in focus. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, it's a nice tight connection. And like I said, it's crimped, it's soldered, it's sealed, It's all good to go. And I've had this discussion many times before. Some people agree, some people don't. But I was brought up in this industry that you only use solder to strengthen and seal an already good mechanical connection. You do not use solder to make a connection. You can do it on light duty circuit boards, but even those will crack over time. It's always best to have a good mechanical connection and then finish it off with solder just for sealing it and give it a little bit more strength. But I think we're probably done on that topic, and I'm going to get this posted and attach it to that, or put a link in there to those other two videos where I put that mega fuse holder in, and this is what I did to the cable that was in the truck and the cable that actually both cable ends. I attached a ring terminal to the cable that was coming out of the harness, made up a new cable that went from the other side and curled back up and went to the battery junction box where it had originally went anyways. I hope that makes some sense, and if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Till later, bye.